Bill McInturff wrote that memo. He is John McCain's lead pollster and a partner at Public Opinion Strategies, and joins us now. Bill, good to see you. Thanks so much. What do you mean by functionally tied? Is that different from being tied?
No, yeah. Functionally tied means, as a pollster, that you're within margin of error. And if you're in 2 or 3 points, it means that in any given day you're going to see some fluctuation and variation. So one day we could be a point ahead, the next day you're 2 points down. Functionally tied was my way as a pollster of saying that I believe that we are within margin of error across these incredibly important battleground states.
What you argue in the memo, and it was a fascinating memo that you released last night, what you argue is that Obama has hit his ceiling. He has gotten all of the identified voters who say they're going to support Barack Obama. And you think there's a real opportunity for John McCain with the independents, the undecideds out there. Talk to me about that.
Sure. What's happening right now is that about 8% of voters are one of two things. One, they're either undecided, or they won't tell us as pollsters who they're going to vote for. They refuse to respond. We did a special study where we looked at that 8% and we looked at who they were. And who they were are older voters who live in rural America, who are somewhat downscale, not college graduates. And in the past, they tell us that in 2004, they voted for George Bush by a 2-to-1 margin. And the point I'm making as a pollster is, look, we've had $140 million of Barack Obama spending. Every day they're hearing that this is Barack Obama's going to win. Now, they're not deciding to vote for Barack Obama. And given their partisan roots and given their Bush over Cary split, I believe they're going to vote. I believe they're going to break very heavily to John McCain, and I think that's roughly an additional 3+ points that will shift to McCain as all the votes are counted. And if you take a functionally tied race and you add 3 to 4 points as these people break, guess what? The race is tied. And how is this possible? Well, we've seen it. In the Democrat primaries, the, quote, undecided vote in the last 2 months is breaking 70-30 against Senator Obama. So it's not that I'm just projecting this to happen, it's that we've seen it happen in a Democrat primary. Now we have a pool of people who voted in the past 2-to-1 Republican who've not yet decided how to vote. I think they break heavily our way, and I think that squishes this race to functionally tied.
It's a fascinating theory. The only difference since the primaries, of course, is this tsunami of what's happened since September 15th with the economy. You're facing headwinds that are unprecedented, and anecdotally what we're finding out there among white, blue-collar voters who frankly might be resistant to voting for an African American is people are saying, yeah, but we are so scared and so angry about what's happening right now that we'll do anything, we'll try anything new. Are you finding that? Are you picking that up? And what is the impact of that?
Sure. Look, again, you know, if you're a pollster, you got to be within spitting distance of a real number. That's exactly how people feel, Andrea, and you're describing it very well. But guess what? Those people feel that way, but they're not voting for Senator Obama. And my point's very simple. We've watched this very difficult economy since the financial collapse of the economic markets. We've watched $140 million of advertising, and my point is very simple. If they wanted to vote for Senator Obama, they would have done so by now, and they would have disclosed that. So what I believe, and this, by the way, this happens all the time, it's in polling, what we say is incumbents get what they get in the tracking. Meaning that when you're the well-known incumbent and you're the established brand, undecided voters don't break to you, they break disproportionately to the challenger.
And you're saying that because of his advertising, Barack Obama is already perceived as an incumbent?
Well, he's not perceived as an incumbent. I'm saying functionally from a polling standpoint, that because of this huge amount of money that he's already spent, he is the defined brand. And although they look, and my memo says this, these people are very economically stressed, they're very concerned about the economy, which is why, by the way, they've not already yet decided to vote for John McCain. What I'm arguing is very simple, which is, in the past, what do we know? These are white, downscale, rural voters who voted 2-to-1 for George Bush over John Cary. And when they go to vote, and I believe they will in this election, other elections they might have been non-voters. I think we're going to have extraordinary turnout, like literally 130 to 135 million voters. And when that happens and these people vote, I believe they're going to flip heavily in our direction, and I believe we're going to gain points. And by the way, here's the other thing that's happening. It's not just our polling. Rasmussen has gone from -12 to -3. Most polls have cut our margins in half, the public polls, from where we were last Tuesday and Wednesday to where we are today. And that race is closing. And here's why it's also happening. Guess what? Jimmy Carter got 50% of the vote. Bill Clinton only got 49% of the vote in 2 different elections. It is very difficult for a Democrat in this country to get a majority of the vote. And so what's beginning to happen
in 92, that was a 3-way race. But let me ask you, Bill, about the different factor, the X factor of new voters and the NBC News, MySpace, Wall Street Journal poll that I know you're familiar with, which showed an extraordinary enthusiasm and a really lopsided balance with new voters and young, the 18 to 21s out there. If they turn out, will your undecideds, if they all break your way, offset the large numbers of African Americans who are going in, according to all polls, it's practically 99 to 1 rather than the number of Hispanics and African Americans and other minority voters that George Bush got. So you've got a real imbalance there among minorities and among new voters.
Yeah. Here's the thing, it's a great question. In our polling and the way we do it, I'm assuming that African Americans are going to turn out at record levels, and they will be a point higher than the percent they make up in the entire population, which would be an historic level of turnout. I'm assuming that 18 to 29-year-old voters are going to go up as a percent of the electorate. I believe those things are going to happen. That's what I think the polling says. What I'm suggesting, though, is guess what? Is that in 2004, there were 122 million voters. There were 104 million voters in 2000. That's a huge turnout that we've not witnessed before. I'm talking about literally 130 to 135 million people. And so what I'm arguing is, guess what? Everybody's going to vote. Everybody's going to vote who is registered. I mean, we're going to have 85, 90% turnout rates, I believe, of registered voters in many states. And when that happens, that the turnout amongst all these other groups begin to mute some of those margins. Now, here's the way you can measure it in the exit poll. On the exit poll, it asks, "Are you a first-time voter?" Most of the time, in the last 4 election cycles, first-time voters have been somewhere between 8 to 11%, 8 to 11% of the vote. In some of the public polls, new voters are weighted at 15%. That's what they're estimating. I will be shocked if that happens. I'll be very surprised, and I'd be wrong. I believe we're going to see something like the normal 11%. That's what we're seeing in our internal surveys, somewhere between 9 to 11% at the max, which is just like 2004. But as a consequence of that, I believe because of the overall volume of turnout and again, what I'm saying, this collapse amongst undecided voters breaking, as they have historically, in the Republican direction, that this takes a race that's already within margin of error and closes the race to essentially tied. Now, a few things can happen. One, as I said, if this were just our polling, people could say, "Oh, that's just McCain polling." But you know, it's not our polling. It's like every poll out there is showing the same significant movement to our campaign in the last week. And in some ways, and let's take Rasmussen today. For the first time, John McCain's within margin of error in a Rasmussen poll, and McCain's at his highest percentage since late September. There's no question that the economic shock of what happened in late September has added one more weight to this campaign. But here's what is also beginning to happen. That's a month ago now, and people have kind of absorbed it, and God bless America, they're moving on, and as they're moving on, they're making a new choice, which is, for real, who's going to be president in the next 4 years. And guess what? And this is, of course, what Senator McCain said today. When you interview those undecided voters and we ask them this very simple question, what's your hesitation about Senator Obama? What's your concern? What's your doubt? What do you worry about? Their number one response is lack of experience. Their second response is more specific. How will he handle kind of the international crisis? And guess what? That's why we have his own running mate on air. We have a commercial that has his own running mate, Joe Biden, saying, "You're right.
And those are the points that John McCain is making, clearly reflecting your polls. To be continued, but Bill McInturff, fascinating stuff. And thank you for joining us. And of course, the issue will be, do the undecided votes all go that way? And does the youth vote turn out? And we're going to be talking to Luke Russert about that in a bit.
They will.
Coming up next.